Before you'll ask it, yes, the video is in a weird ratio, because that is the ratio I was able to record the game in. So there's that. Oh, but you could have cropped it. Yeah, your dad should have gone to bed early that night too. Deal with it. With that out of the way, let me just say I have a love-hate relationship with this game. First time I played it, it was on my dad's Nokia Bell A603. But I couldn't complete it, because that version of the game was riddled with game-breaking glitches. After that, I tried some more versions of it within the past 3 years, but the game ran into trouble one way or another. In one version, you're unable to slide over the boxes that get you access to the cemetery. You arrive here within the first 2 minutes of starting the game. So all in all, this bug locked me out of the game within the first 2 minutes of starting the game. Other times, the enemy just failed to spawn in on the map. And that happened when you have completed all 3/4 of the game, ending that run right there. One of the reasons for the presence of this game-breaking bugs is because Gameloft had to make a separate version of its games for separate devices, so they had to make a large number of ports for just a single game, because unlike the present times, the mobile devices in that era were extremely fragmented. When the game isn't breaking with bugs, they are breaking with nasty hitboxes and brain-dead NPC behaviors. I'll talk about the story now. The story starts with the protagonist, Jack Barnes, us, getting thrown out of a hotel, while a bald guy named Miller is yelling at us and accusing us of cheating in the game, which escalates into a street brawl. But we have no idea where we are or what we are doing here. After the brawl, we ask someone for the sheriff. Eventually, we find him pinned down in the cemetery in a shootout. After helping him, we asked him for help. See, we were on our way to Laredo to deliver our brother's bounty in exchange for his freedom. But somehow, we found ourselves here in Silverdale, with the money missing. On hearing this, the sheriff offers his help, as he had just lost 2 of his deputies. We agree to it and start capturing the criminal element. Among these elements is a person named Cash Robbins. We were instructed by the sheriff to bring him alive. We do that, but on asking him what he's gonna do with Robbins, he tells us that Cash is going to dig himself a grave in a cemetery. After having some heart-to-heart, which just tells us a thing or two about the sheriff. See, first thing, the sheriff does have something against Robbins, that he wanted to kill him himself. The other thing being the actions of the sheriff aren't inherently determined by the law. There is no transfer of criminals, no public hangings, just a sort of vigilante justice. Anyways, sometimes after that, a businessman or a rich dude named Colin Bailey arrives in town from Baltimore, Maryland, to inspect an alleged silver vein in the land he just bought from someone named Billings, and wanted us to hire us for protection. So we along with him go to his land, some stuff happens and we end up with a horse stung to death by bees. Jack remembers that something like this happened to him when he was a kid, for which his dad whooped his ass because he didn't stop crying. But anyways, sometime after all this happens, we are approached by Wendy Bailey, Colin Bailey's wife. She tells us that her husband has gone missing. Furthermore, she tells us that the prospector had finished surveying the land some time ago and told his seller, Billings, that the land didn't have any silver. Unknowing this, Colin went to the sheriff, who brushed his concerns aside and didn't do anything. So Colin threatened to bring in some guys from the Pinkerton agency. And a colon is missing. What was I thinking? Colon. Well, and now Colin is missing. So she thinks he might have been silenced. On inspecting further, we do find that Colin was indeed killed, and we had an encounter with Billings' right-hand man, Trout Jennings, and we kill him, and bring the unfortunate news to Wendy. Getting more into this, we find out that Sheriff Wade was also in on this. On finding this news, Wendy starts getting worried for her safety and asks us to escort her out of the town, which we do but face some gunfire on our way. Eventually, we get her to safety and return back to town. Sometimes after these events, the sheriff hires us to get rid of an outlaw named Roland Butler, who was the leader of the gang which attacked him in the cemetery. We pursue him and end up in a long-drawn standoff in a cave, where we kill anyone and everyone in there. Finally, we corner him. Here, Butler reveals us that Sheriff Wade was dirty. Cash Robbins, who was captured for Wade earlier, was going to testify against him in the court, and by killing him, he just tied up a loose end. And Butler further tells us that after we kill him, Sheriff Wade was gonna hunt us too. as we are the last loose end. You see, Wade and Butler were in cahoots and working on a scam where they sold barren lands under the pretense that the land was rich in silver. This lines up with whatever happened earlier in the story, so we agree with them and get back to Silverdale, where surely enough Sheriff Wade was waiting for us with his men. However, we turn the tables on him and kill the whole posse, whatever that's called. Immediately after that, a mysterious man gives us a letter telling us that our brother was in some deep trouble. Apparently, he's not in prison in Laredo, but at some place named Oslon's Hollow. But he didn't explain how he got here, or how did he know where to find us. On asking, Butler tells us that Oslon's Hollow is a ghost town and helps us to get there. Jack goes to Oslon's Hollow and comes across a house. His own house. He remembers his house, but knew nothing about Oslon's Hollow. Suddenly he collapses and then we see a dream sequence. In this dream, Jack talks to Catherine, his possible love interest. Throughout this sequence, she disappears and we have to go to different locations to find her. The stream version of Oslon's Hollow is in perpetual night and rain, with a somewhat hopeful western soundtrack playing in the background, which unfortunately wasn't exclusive to this area. I would have preferred if each region had its special music, but oh well. Anyways, we arrive at a cemetery. Here, Catherine is tied up and we have to clear the area to reach her. After the shootout, we untie her, try to talk to her but she disappears and the noises could be heard from the barn after it. We reach the barn where she's tied down and we again have to clear the area to reach her. But on reaching her, she begs for us to stay but disappears again. We repeat the previous step again, but this time, as Catherine was talking to us about some tree by the river, she is shot by a surviving bandit. Jack kills him, but Catherine, in her dying breath, asks Jack not to let them take her away from him. Her death causes us to wake up from the nightmare. Was it a nightmare to begin with, though? See, Jack wakes up, but he still sees Catherine, who asks us to find a doctor named Oakley. Doctor as in a man of science, not a medical practitioner. So, a phantom seemingly gave us instructions to find someone who would help us to find our brother. Maybe there's something more than what meets the eye. Anyways, we head out to the desert, the next game area, to find this Dr. Oakley. From Oslon's Hollow, we go to the desert and meet Dr. Oakley, but not before getting ourselves in a gang fight situation. Dr. Oakley is how you'd imagine any paranoid, cynic, irritating scientist to be. He's a slag. For each bit of information, we have to perform some tasks for him, which includes blowing up people who were hired to beat him up by a farmer because his pigs were used by this deranged fella to do some experiments, killing a bunch of gang members or something I don't remember, and harassing some fella because he found some glowing rock which the doctor wants. Eventually, all the shit which Doctor pulls alerts the infamous Pinkertons, and both of them flee the town. Behavior-wise, Dr. Oakley closely resembles Nigel West Dickens from RDR1, whose job was to just bat out the playtime. But eventually, after performing a long list of chores, Oakley tells us that our brother did come to him, because apparently he was suffering from some grave disease. But Oakley couldn't help him, so he went away, hoping fate will save him where science couldn't, to a community called Phosphorous in some backwater swamp. This community is ran by someone called Phosphate, and we head out there to find our brother. We arrive here, and the design of this area is really interesting. Apart from excellent art direction and scattered bones, we can also find guns scattered all over the map. Now, it isn't that the guns aren't scattered anywhere in the previous maps, but here they're scattered just about anywhere, indicating that anyone can get killed anywhere in this region and people didn't even care about disposing of neither the body nor the belongings of them. We're really in the wildest parts of the Wild West here. Also, before I move forward, there's something I skipped. Before heading to Swamp, we head to Oslon's Hollow with the doctor to escape our pursuers. Here, we have another dreamlike sequence. This time, they've got a friend of Jack, Brian Carson. Apparently, Jack pulled something off which this rival gang didn't like, and to get to him, they kidnapped Brian. We cut through the gang members, but eventually Brian is killed by Anthony, who we killed too, in a duel. But anyways, back to the swamp now. Upon arriving the swamp, we ask for Phosphorous from a man called Preston Cirque. He immediately lashes out on us, thinking that we're one of the members of the community, and demands to know the whereabouts of his wife. Apparently, Phosphorous is a predatory community which looks for downtrodden, depressed members of the society, and makes them join the community through whatever means necessary. They have taken his wife away too. But on making things clear to him, he tells us to go to the house to the north and ask the people there. On going there, we are greeted by a hillbilly, and on asking about Phosphorous, he tells us that we need a special coin, which are only given to those deemed worthy by the community, and apparently, a woman has given him her coin earlier, saying that she doesn't want it anymore. On asking if he could give us the coin, he asks us for a favor from us, to bring back his brother, who had gone deep into the swamp to look for some plant for seasoning. We agree to that, find his brother, bring him back to the house, and get surrounded by more hillbillies. Apparently, this bunch is a group of cannibals and are looking to season us. We get in a long shootout and kill them all. After that, we finally find that coin in a heap of bones of their unfortunate victims. Eventually, we arrive at the closed-off hamlet led by Phosphorous. On entering this town, we have our first and only random encounter of the game. Random encounter as in encounter with dialogues. People here are, I won't say hostile, but closed off. We do a couple of missions for the sheriff, and by the looks of it, he's a phosphate fanatic too, because most of the bounties which he gives us are individuals which are considered thorn in his side by phosphate. We do a couple of missions, which aren't really related to the main story. We help a guy retrieve his stolen dynamite. We reunite Preston Cirque with his wife, among other stuff, which are just there to bat at the game time really. One such mission was to stop the Green Brothers, two crazy pyromaniacs who were making too much noise, which of course we do, and the sheriff, impressed by our works, tells about us to Phosphate, and we are granted audience with him. We meet Phosphate, and he asks us to get rid of the traitors in the community, which we do. We leave his place, but we are presented by a lingering shot. A follower of his asks him whether he really trusts us, to which he says he doesn't. But either we'll deal with the rats, or the rats will deal with us. So it'll be a win-win situation. We proceed to lay down a trap for someone named James. He and his men step on a hole filled with dynamite and blow up. We kill the remaining two survivors. After this happens, we inspect their bodies and find out that they were feds. Apparently, to keep Phosphorous and Phosphate under a microscope, the feds had infiltrated the community and Phosphate was using us to weed them out. We got surrounded by more feds, but we somehow escaped. We confront Phosphate about this, who tells us that now we are truly a part of Phosphorous and gives us a few targets to kill. We reach the targets and find ourselves in another long-drawn shootout. Eventually, we kill all the bandits and kill their leader in a duel. But as we're returning to Phosphate's place, we find bodies of men strewn in our path. The whole town had been silenced, and Phosphate was lying dead just outside his house. It isn't explicitly stated that what happened in there, but I'll assume that the feds, in retaliation to our actions, shot up the whole town. However, a surviving follower does recognize us as the brother of William, and tells us that he indeed came here, but couldn't stand Phosphate's insanity. So he went away in search for the man who walks in darkness, and that led him to an old ghost town north of here, which you guessed it, is Oslon's Hollow. Now this part is by far the most boring part, and is all over the place. The story in this part is trying really hard to become something supernatural, whereas previously it was grounded just like any traditional Western story. This makes the story only more confusing, and when it's not that, it's plain boring. So much so that I don't even know what to say about this part. But still, at least give you the overview. After doing a whole bunch of chores, we bust open the entrance to the cave, where we encounter some ghosts, and eventually encounter a man in the corner of the game who lives in a tent and is called Man in Darkness. And spoiler alert, he is the man who walks in darkness. But by the looks of the chores he gives us, he seems like a crackhead who goes in concerts and stabs everyone with his needle. He asks us to bring 5 nightshades, which of course we do, and asks us to hear the darkness while we do it. Yeah, wisdom my ass. William came here to get free crack. When we bring the nightshade to the homeless bum, he says he doesn't need it, and asks us whether we listen to the darkness or not. The writers must have been smoking something while writing this section. Now obviously we didn't quote, "Listen to the darkness," unquote, so he asks us to get back when we do. After some time, he asks us to bring someone to him, because that person knew about our brother, and like a meek sheep, we bring him in. Turns out that person destroyed the barn of a crackhead friend, and poked his eyes out so that he could not testify against him. We lasso him, and bring him to the homeless bum, and he tells us that William is the head of his gang. So naturally, we go on a killing spree to get to him. Before that, the homeless crackhead tells us about our childhood, then asks, why'd we really come here? We think about it, and realize that our story doesn't add up. But still, we end up going into the maze, which leads us to our brother, and shockingly, the crackhead is on the other side of the maze before us. We ask him if we already know him, to which he replies, "All men know me eventually." To which I said, what the fuck? Where's this going? Is he the personification of death? If is, then how come he had a barn and had his eyes gouged out? This doesn't make any sense. But if we assume that he is indeed a junkie, that would explain a lot. But getting back on track, we once again kill the entire gang. In the end, we meet the bandit, who is surprised that we didn't recognize him, because we're him. We dismiss his words as just ramblings and enter a duel with him. We shoot him, and he falls, but he gets back up, becomes William, and tells us that we're the actual leader of the gang. The Wilson gang shot William a long time ago because we double-crossed him, and they wanted revenge for that. They couldn't find us, so they shot William. But he has forgiven us, because apparently their dad was harsh on Jack, and that was the reason he turned out that way, and we were eventually caught and hung, and that we were living our regrets, and that's why we couldn't pass on to the other world. But here's just to forgive ourselves, which we eventually do, and we finally meet a mom, dad, and lover and pass on. Bullshit! What's the point of the story? There's so many holes in this boat. First of all, was he in a purgatory? Or was he just a ghost wandering the earth, or was it just an Ethan Winter situation? And how are people interacting with him so normally in the real world? Are there absolutely no signs that we are a ghost? We do die when our health runs out. What kind of ghost are we, if we still have to do chores for a deranged doctor or sheriff of a cult town? There was no build-up to this twist. All the flashbacks that we saw still don't add up after this revelation. This final part of the story seems really out of place. And the worst part is that since I could never finish this game before because of all the game-breaking bugs, I didn't know about the story, and for nearly a decade I avoided looking it up, and when I finally got to know it, it felt like the writers took a piss in my mouth. This game was a disappointment. It's painful to play when it breaks, and the only saving grace of this game is its pixel art style. Play it, but be warned that it will disappoint you. Thank you.
No vamos a bailar con el pequeño.